Hello, everyone. Good afternoon from Toronto. Thank you so much for joining us for this live webinar session. I am Ayman Chaudhary, the Head of Secretariat at the Global Compact Network Canada, which is the world's largest corporate sustainability initiative, the Canadian chapter of the world's largest corporate sustainability initiative, the United Nations Global Compact. The UN Global Compact has made a call to business leaders everywhere in the world to unite to support workers, communities, and companies affected by the current pandemic situation. And today, I am pleased to launch a special Canada-focused webinar series from the Global Compact Network Canada, titled as Business Continuity Through the Lens of Sustainability. This webinar series will focus on the Canadian response to COVID-19 and share the insights, priorities, and inspirations of our top business leaders, government representatives, and sustainability experts. The webinar series aims to offer thoughtful reflection and expertise while hoping to reanimate collaboration and drive actionable goals. Today is the first session of this webinar series, and the title for the session is Leadership from the Top: How Senior Canadian Business Leaders Are Responding to the COVID-19 Crisis. I'm pleased to introduce our panel we have on the line today. Stephanie Vakari, the Managing Partner of Baker & McKinsey Canada office, Neelam Sandhu, Vice President of Business Operations and Strategy Accounts, Office of the CEO at BlackBerry, and Marcelo Liu, President of BSF Canada. Thank you so much for joining us today, Marcelo, Neelam, and Stephanie. I know there must be a lot on your plate already to guide your company through this crisis, but as a regular follower of your updates, I know a lot of good initiatives are being taken by your team that could be very inspiring for our listeners today. Also, a key part of our discussion today will include, as the UN Global Compact participants, how your organization is living up to the 10 sustainability principles and the Sustainable Development Goals. But before jumping into that, I'd just like to request everyone who have joined the session, please keep yourself muted, and please do not share your webcam. And if you have any questions, we will try to address that at the end of the session. Please put it on the chat option here. If you see on the main go-to screen, you will see that there's a chat function. Please put your questions there, and we will see if we have some time at the end of the session to address any of the questions today. We have a lot of topic to cover, so I'm not too sure how much we will be able to save some time, but please do share your questions with us, and we will try our best to respond to those. So as I was mentioning, that I would like to start the discussion by asking the three speakers that we have with us today to reflect on this current crisis that we are seeing, and what impact this crisis is currently having on your organization, staff, and commitments. So we have three speakers. So I'm just going to randomly call on your names. So let's start the first one with Marcelo. So can you please reflect on this, please? Marcelo, I think we can't hear you. I think you're muted. No, cannot hear you.
Sorry, somebody had muted me. Can you hear me now? Hello? Anybody?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes.
All right, very good. So I think I was double muted. So one of those great things about COVID, yeah? This is how I was infected in COVID. I am usually double muted. But I think first of all, I wanted to thank you, Ayman, and thanks everybody for joining. Thanks again for Stephanie and Neelam for sharing the time. I mean, from an organizational point of view, from a staff and community, I think the best word is really disruption, you know? And it's not all bad, I would argue. Yeah, there's some positive disruption and some negative ones. I would argue for the company, for our organization, if I try to take the positive spin out of this current situation, it really brought the company very much together. We are spread out across Canada, 1,200 employees, and I would argue that the impact has been positive for the company as a purpose, yeah, that we now live to really support our employees, our communities, but also our customers. So from that perspective, on our organization, overall, I would argue it's positive. Yes, we have some challenges on business, but I think people see the positive of us coming a bit closer together. From a staff perspective, I would say it's a bit mixed. Yeah, some of the colleagues are not impacted at all. I mean, they just have to more do the stay at home. But some colleagues, we do know that they have been impacted one way or the other with people that they know about, contracting the virus, or people that have parents that are in homes, elderly homes. So of course there is some mixed messages there, and also we have people that have families in the house, and some people that are living alone. So again, I would say it's mixed. And from a community perspective, I would still say it's of course challenging to see the news, but again, I sense that Canada at its best, and the communities in Canada at its best, is also trying to make the best out of this. So the Stronger Together movement, I think, is also very positive. And this is how I personally see from the three perspectives. Yeah.
Okay, I'm kind of forgetting to unmute myself as well. Sorry about that. So Neelam, let's hear from you. Okay, I think I have to unmute yourself as well. Okay, can you try now?
Yep.
Perfect.
Great. So hi everybody, and similar to Marcelo's comments, where the pandemic has very much given everybody, our employee base and the wider community, something to rally around and fight a common enemy. A common enemy is often, known for bringing people together, and that enemy, of course, being COVID-19. And I would guess that most people have the experience of when they join a call or an event or a meeting of some sort, the first few minutes, everybody shares their experiences of what working from home is like, and the work-life balance experience of that. So it's given everybody something to rally around and built that community feel within our business, so across the employee base, but also with our customers, partners, and the wider community. And it has also certainly given, I believe, everybody a different perspective on what is important. Of course, business performance is important, and that's absolutely a priority. But what is the purpose of business? And really, it is to improve people's lives and help one another and bring people together in it. And through different initiatives that we have put in place personally at BlackBerry, such as offering our software, our remote work software, and our employee management, crisis management software for free to all organizations around the world. And then as well, having different tools and assets and webinars and other benefits for employees to enable them to work from home with a better balance, to manage their lives with children, to manage their mental health, particularly when you're social distancing. It can be very isolating for many people. So it has given everybody that perspective as well of what the purpose of business is and the value of community, right, and all of the benefits that come with that.
Great to see the focus on the people here. We will have more discussion on that. Stephanie, let's hear from you.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Oh, good. Okay. And I completely agree with both Marcelo and Neelam, and I'll just give you my perspective as being managing partner of a law firm. And we were one of the first law firms to essentially work from home. And when we did and made that decision, a lot of the other law firms were actually in shock because of that. But my priority are my employees and the people. And it's continuous. Are my employees safe? This is what I constantly think of on a day-to-day basis, mentally and physically, because being confined as well, there are issues in that regard. And so COVID has in fact, you know, I feel like I don't have time to think, and I can't, and I have to make decisions, but I can't make a mistake in order to ensure that my employees are safe. So we have implemented, at a very, very rapid pace, various well-being seminars. We offer exercise sessions over the internet. Remote working, it works for us because we've done that in the past. And another thing I think we have to look at is communication and the social interaction, and that's what Neelam was discussing. And so during this time, we're also very, very, there's a high level of communication with all the employees. We're in constant contact. We have town halls. We have, on a daily basis, we're always in communication. One of the negative impacts of COVID is the economic impact to families. And this is another factor that I take into consideration. And so, we've tried to limit the impact of the adverse market conditions. And so we didn't reduce the wages of individuals under a certain threshold in order to try and minimize that impact to families. From a community perspective, and this is really close to my heart, domestic violence and gender inequality, we're seeing that has increased, unfortunately. But from a positive perspective, the environment, we are helping the environment, and it is healing at this point in time.
Yeah, that's absolutely one of the most positive things that probably we are getting out of this COVID-19 situation, the environmental impact. But then again, at the same time, we have the fear, and we really hope that the economy gets restarted soon again. And I just hope that the lessons that we are seeing or getting through this time of crisis, we will kind of hold some of those. And when we are discussing or deciding our next initiatives or next activities, we just keep that in mind, that it is possible. It is possible to bring the environment back to the tolerant level. So yes, indeed, it's a unique situation, and definitely it's having an impact on both of our daily work lives and our personal lives. But now moving on to the next question, and this is more what we wanted to discuss in our in this webinar call today. Like as you all know, the United Nations Global Compact has made a call to business leaders to use the power of 10 principles through this crisis. So as you all are like participants of UN Global Compact, can you shed some lights like how your business is kind of keeping a check on those 10 principles? Maybe highlight like some of the thematic areas like human rights, anti-corruption, environment, and labor. Would be great to know. So this time, let's start with Stephanie.
Thanks. Well, so Baker McKenzie was the first global law firm to become a signatory of the UN Global Compact. And so, this is near and dear to our heart. And I'm going to focus on human rights and labor principles 1 through 6, because that is something that we definitely are focused on, and we're committed to workplace diversity and inclusion. And this is obviously impacted by COVID. So prior to COVID, we introduced global aspirational targets, and we were one of the first global law firms to ever do this. And so our targets are 40-40-20, which means by July 1st, 2025, we aspire to have 40% women, 40% men, and 20% other, which could include women, men, and what have you, in the senior business and leading roles. And so we are continuing moving this forward. Even through COVID, there are definite, the firm globally is very cognizant of this fact. Right now is our evaluation process to, advance people, to partner, et cetera. And again, those targets are considered, women are considered. We have a very robust sponsorship program for women at Baker McKenzie. It's called the LIFT sponsorship, and that is still going on, albeit we're going to be doing it more remotely rather than in person. But this sponsorship is where a senior partner in the organization from all over the world is paired with someone who aspires to become one of our partners, and they help them move through the organization, and that is still continuing. which is great. From client facing, we are doing a lot of pro bono during this time. We have partnered with a number of like-minded clients and homeless charities. For example, we rolled out the Homeless Youth Handbook prior to COVID, but we're still continuing rolling it out in various jurisdictions. And this handbook is not only for the youth, but it's for social workers, shelter staff, school personnel, and it provides, information for individuals regarding homelessness and what they can do. Another partnership that we are doing, and I can't disclose with whom, but this is really big. It's another youth resource, which is happening right now as we speak. And it's where youth can access real-time information to justice and social protection. So, for example, if they have a court date and because of COVID they can't go, this will provide them with information as to where they have to go, what they have to do, what if they don't have any housing, what shelters are open, how they can get health care, etc. On another front, domestic violence, we're doing a lot on a pro bono level with other organizations, analyzing the laws in various jurisdictions in that regard. And with respect to the environment, so we have external facing carbon targets globally. It's very leading edge. And by 2030, our firm's objective is to reduce carbon emissions by 92%. Now, I know during COVID, we're actually doing really well because nobody is traveling. However, what we're doing right now is planning to ensure that it doesn't ramp up once COVID is over, and to ensure that we are trying to curb travel or how we can curb travel and help these emissions. So those are just a few of the things that we're doing at Baker McKenzie.
That's amazing. Some great examples. Let's hear from Neelam.
Yeah, absolutely. So as Stephanie mentioned, the economic impact of COVID-19 is surreal. In fact, it's far-reaching. The impacts are well unknown at this moment in time of just how the economy will be impacted finally, and how it will start to recover. So one of the things that we have done is to, I mentioned earlier, to offer our software for free to all organizations around the world, particularly targeted at small to medium enterprises, and in any country, in any vertical, any industry. And the purpose of that is to enable those organizations to very quickly ramp up to be able to work from home, as well as account for their employees from a health and safety perspective and help manage that. Because it was such a dramatic and quick shift for countries, for companies, for cities and towns and people to have to move to a work from home model. So wherever we can help with that, to enable those companies to stay online, be productive, help them be financially sound, we've been supporting that as much as we can. And yeah, absolutely, we've definitely seen a particular interest from small to medium enterprises on that. And especially over the first couple of weeks when the lockdowns went into place in different countries. And then we joined the UNGC SDGs program last year in April. We've been working on a number of programs, which we haven't announced them all yet, but that's coming soon. A number of programs regarding how we will contribute to the SDGs. And you know, the danger is that with COVID-19, people start to assume that there should be less of a focus on this now because they need to focus on the economy, or the environment has started to improve because people are traveling less and commuting less. But I think that's a dangerous point of view. And instead, we should be looking to capitalize on some of the quite dramatic shifts to the environment that have happened in a positive way, and leverage those and see how we can maintain some of those. So personally, we have BlackBerry been looking at how we can keep some of the positive changes in place. For example, less travel. At the moment, we're not traveling at all, but how could we minimize travel now that people have had to be forced to use some digital tools for meetings and events? There's a comfort level that has come from that to the experience of using them. How do you maintain that and not shift back immediately to full-on travel and lots of events that all have to be in person? How do you maintain the fact that meetings can also, internal meetings can be via video conference and be just as productive? So looking to maintain some of the positives that have come from COVID-19. I know that's probably not the easiest statement to stomach, because of course COVID-19 is a horrible situation, but where there are benefits, we should try to leverage those. And additionally, looking at where the travel industry is most severely impacted by COVID-19, how do we then pivot our SDGs program and initiatives to not just look at reducing our carbon emissions, right, which primarily have come from travel in the past. So we are looking at different initiatives around now with a focus on clean water and access to clean water. The statistics around how many people do not have access to clean water are shocking, and the more you read into it, the more of the gravity of the situation you can start to understand. And particularly with the pandemic, the direction and instructions that have been communicated repetitively by the World Health Organization, by governments, is wash your hands. But so many people don't have access to clean water. So how do we enable that? But enable that in ways that are using clean technologies. How do we invest in programs that enable people to have access to clean water? And so those are a couple of the ways that we've been trying to continue to drive the UN Global Compact principles and SDGs.
Perfect. There are some great examples that you've shared, and maybe we'll be touching up on a few of those in our next few questions. So let's hear from Marcelo now about how you're keeping a check on those principles.
Yeah, and I mean, I was thinking on how to respond to this, and I think the best way would be to share, our BSF Canada scorecard that or dashboard, let me put it this way, that we have. And we basically have 5 categories. One is safety. Yeah, we don't do this because of COVID. This is something that is always in our dashboard. But of course, with COVID coming, we have implemented a lot of new protocols in place so that people are feeling safe coming to work. It's a safe environment in the sites that we have. The offices are, of course, closed at the moment, but when we return, I don't think if, when we return, for sure there will be planning done there. Also, to add to people's safety and feeling safe, we have also signed a contract with Cleveland Clinic to allow all colleagues in the company and their families to have access to telehealth. So they don't need to go to the doctor. They are able to get the doctor or the nurse directly on their phone, and Cleveland Clinic is able to subscribe directly to the nearest pharmacy that they have there. So that is also something that is very important. So that is on the safety side. Of course, it's a core value of BSF. Being a chemical producer, safety is a concern always for us, but of course gets acute at the moment of crisis. The other one is from our dashboard or from our scorecard that we always make visible every quarter to colleagues, is on the people side. And I think both colleagues mentioned about this. One that we really are very proud of is the intake of women on the gender equality side that we have in the company. We do more than 40% of the colleagues coming into the company. And this is a manufacturing company, which usually companies like to use it as an excuse that for whatever reason it's not possible. It is very possible to have this high degree of women coming into a manufacturing sector. So we're very proud of that. One of the things that we also do is have quite a bit of ERGs in place, to the point that I think some of the colleagues here made on being able to access things virtually. So we have an off-site employee resource team that really looks at measures, tools, and things that we can do, to cater to people now having to work, let's say, virtually. But also we have, and I think most of the companies now have these, women in business chapters, different kind of diversity and inclusion topics that really, really attract colleagues, especially at this time when people are a bit confined. They want to see a bit more of that. We have two other indicators, which is growth and customers, and maybe I'll lump that together. And of course, at this moment in crisis, we really need to also be there for our customers. As you can imagine, BSF is a very big company, multinational, but all of our customers here in Canada, I cannot say all, but 60% of it, there are SMEs. So they are going through, back to what Stephanie is mentioning, they are going through some significant downward turn, and they may have lesser tools than we do to survive or weather the storm. So one of the things that we are doing, we are partnering with our consulting companies to provide free consulting to some of our customers. We also have a discussion with BDC on how to extend loans to some of our SME customers. So we're really trying to be there at a time where it is of need, right? So not only during, but as we are entering a recovery stage, for sure is one. And I think one of the more exciting categories of our dashboard or scorecard is sustainability. And we split sustainability into two different metrics. One is our accelerator sales, so products that provide significant sustainability, let's say, advantages or benefits. So we've classified all 60,000 products from BSF, and we have a clear classification in 4 different compartments where accelerator is the most sustainable. So we are putting focus on this and using this crisis or this time to really be able to say, when we get out of this, these are some of the solutions that we should be looking at. Again, back to your point, that we should not be going back to the last normal. We should really create a new normal, and that is with sustainability in focus. And the second half of the sustainability metric, and I think both Neelam and Stephanie also mentioned, is on the emission side, not only in our sites, but also in how we operate. Yeah, so that is all there together. And the last thing that I will end is being there for the community. And there are 2 things that I wanted to highlight. Is we were able to convert one of our facilities to produce hand sanitizers, and all that we produce is donated. And the second thing that we've done, and it was just launched today, is this rapid response platform, which really makes end users and users of PPE, and especially now as we are reopening the economy, or staggering reopening, there will be much more need of this. So it's really a great platform that allows the end users to interact with suppliers, and hopefully it will be made of great use during the reopening stage.
Well, that's really good, and I think all of you have shared some amazing examples that could be actually combined as a guiding document for other businesses. So on that note, we are actually going to launch a working group to identify a way forward for Canadian businesses, keeping the sustainability as a foundation for post-COVID-19 growth. So I'll reach out to all of you to hear your thoughts on that one. But that output will take another couple of months. But in the meanwhile, can you please highlight 2 or 3 key priorities that you are considering to not only to design the plans for recovery, but also to react to such business shocks in future? If you can just highlight 2 or 3 key priorities that you're kind of considering right now. And let's hear from Stephanie first.
Sure. So, and Marcelo spoke about this, one of our key priorities is getting people back into the office in a healthy and, so that they have a healthy and safe work environment, and without impacting the social SDGs. So as Marcelo indicated, we have people with young families. We have people with individuals. They're living with individuals who are vulnerable. People who have to travel and commute, etc. So we're looking at this, and this is one of the things that we are not rushing into because we have to make sure that our people are safe. We are also advising our clients in that regard. Another thing that we're looking at is, and the environment is a big part of this, is do we need all of our office space? Now that we've been able to work remotely, you know, can we reconfigure our offices and use less space? You know, do we need all these people traveling? Can we help the environment and have people stay home? So that's another issue as well that we are looking at.
Great, amazing. Some I think common priorities that we are also seeing some in some other businesses. What about you, Neelam?
So we have, from a financial perspective with the business, we've been doing a lot of financial modeling and to anticipate different scenarios with the goal, similar to what Stephanie mentioned earlier, around the goal being that we don't want to make any employee reductions. The economy is already, the level of unemployment in the economy is already very high and staggeringly high. So our financial modeling is based on things like how do we reduce costs with facilities. And now there are scenarios where we can see employees are able to work from home and we can still be productive. How do we save costs in other ways versus having to make any type of employee reductions? And when it comes to reopening the offices, we are being very cautious as well. We're closely monitoring and following local and federal government guidelines in every country that we have employees. And we're also being cautious where a government may say an economy is ready to reopen, even if that is in phases, being cautious of the potential for, as we're seeing in some countries now in Asia, the potential for the number of occurrences of COVID-19 beginning to creep up again as the economy reopens. So whilst we're following government guidelines, we're being cautious in the sense that we're not immediately reopening our offices when the governments do allow it. We want to monitor how the virus is reoccurring. As well, we have reimagined, let's say, our offices, and we're preparing those around the world to enable social distancing. So we won't allow all employees to re-enter the offices in phase one. And common spaces have been reorganized so the social distancing measures can be implemented. We're making PPE available to all employees, increased sanitation in the offices as well, so higher sanitation processes. And then on the flip side, understanding from an employee's perspective, can they return to the office? There are a number of reasons why they may not be able to. They have parents to care for, or their children's schools have not reopened. There could be multiple reasons. So we're taking all of those factors into consideration and planning along those lines.
That's great. It's good to know that you're putting considerations about all those employees' personal lives as well, and that's always good to hear. Marcelo, what about you?
Yeah, and without wanting to repeat what the colleagues here mentioned, so I'll go for more of the inspirational things that we are trying to really set ourselves up. So when this recovery is really underway, we're going to be able to pinpoint to two specific projects. So one project is called ResiChain. It's a pilot project that we are trying to do in BC. It's around plastic circularity. So I don't want to discount COVID, but I think there's a lot of discussions around plastic being used now during the COVID time, and it's plastic now is all of a sudden good. And I think that there are some very good traits on plastic, But again, going into the more inspirational when we leave out of this, this Chain project is basically a pilot project that we are trying to do in BC, where we can prove that plastic can be circular. There could be a circular economy. So we have an additive that we are able to put into the plastic that allows it to go through the extrusion step and also mechanical recycling, and the tracer survives that. And if we are able to prove that circularity, then of course there's more incentive and the costs are lower to use recycled material into packaging, into different kind of applications for this. So this is something that we don't stop during the, let's say, crisis, or we actually try to accelerate it. So when we are out of this, there could be some inspiration points or projects that really say, oh yes, see, this is still possible to have the new normal with this kind of new solution. You know, so more information on that is on our website for those that are interested. The other one is very exciting, I would argue. It is something that is coming out of Europe. Europe is introducing, I think some of you, hopefully most of you have heard about the Green New Deal, something that is also mentioned on and off in the US, a little bit more political. But in Europe, I think there is a big traction on this. And actually, BASF has a colleague who has been seconded to a alliance consortium called the Value Balancing Alliance. And that alliance now has been tasked by the EU Commission to rewrite the accounting standards to put in practice green accounting. So as you can imagine, if I am a company like BASF, and if I invest $1 million, I can reduce my emissions by half, but it doesn't increase my sales. There is really difficulty for the company to prove to the shareholder that this is really important. Yeah, some companies do it anyway, but it's very difficult to do with the accounting standards the way they are. These new accounting principles would then allow you to get some positive in your balance sheet that allows you to counterbalance this negative of the investment. So that is one. And also, Value Balancing Alliance is also being tasked by the EU Commission to do a new standard on impact measurement. Yeah, so the impact that the operations have on the environment, on society. So we are trying to pull this into Canada. And next week, there will be a webinar that we put forth with the Corporate Knights and the VBA, the Value Balancing Alliance, trying to motivate or instigate some kind of interest here in Canada to open a chapter of the VBA here, as I think the government and also Canadians in general are interested in getting a little bit more acquainted to this. So this is not something that goes overnight, but again, one of those inspirational topics that that hopefully people can cling to as a new normal as we get out of this, which is fully aligned then with the SDGs as well.
That's really good to know, and it's good to see, Marcelo, like how you're putting like a very positive approach in you're already preparing your organization how to kind of be to the next normal and seeing the next opportunities that we can actually identify through this different sustainability lens in keeping in mind. So that's really refreshing to see. So now let's kind of discuss a little bit about our very precious sustainable development goals. As you all know that we kicked the 2020 declaring it as the decade of action to deliver the 17 global goals. But sadly, this pandemic hit at a time when we were actually starting to see some acceleration towards achieving those goals. How do you think like this whole COVID-19 or the pandemic situation is going to kind of play out to achieve those global goals, and what role businesses can play to ensure that the responses to the pandemic are not delinked from the sustainable development goals? So let's start from Neelam this time.
So I would say that I'm starting to hear more and more companies and citizens talking about how this pandemic has provided benefits to the environment, and so it's really important to businesses to continue full steam ahead with their original sustainability programs and not take their foot off of the gas pedal there. Perhaps there's some areas they'll need to pivot, like we have when it comes to the focus that we had on reducing travel, because that's naturally changed, but not taking businesses should not take their foot off the gas pedal on their sustainability programs. It's critical, although we've seen some great changes over the past few weeks and some great results. Those could be short-lived if we go back to normal and right after this and don't take some of the lessons learned from it. And so one piece would be continuing with your programs, perhaps having to pivot them slightly. But the second is, and it's something that we've all of us on the call today have talked about when answering prior questions, is that there are a number of lessons learned that have come out of having to work remotely. And there are probably some companies who've been a little bit hesitant to do that. Some companies haven't been set up to do that in the past, and they've had to get set up quite quickly over the past few weeks. But how do you capitalize on that? And particularly, this is one of the things over the past few years we've really been trying to drive within BlackBerry as well. How do you drive employees to use digital tools more, particularly for internal meetings? Because it's so easy to pick up the phone, have a video conference call, and video conference call can give you the same experience as you'd have, especially with the tools that are available today, as you would in person. And absolutely, when you're meeting a customer, or you have to go in and support the customer from a technical perspective, being on site is important. So reducing travel or eliminating travel 100% is not realistic. But those meetings, particularly internal ones that can happen using virtual tools, which, as you know, probably from setting up webinars and things like that, they're very advanced these days, and they have some great features and functions. How do you can maintain those lessons learned? And then when it comes to facilities, how can you reimagine the workplace a little bit and recognize that being in the office together definitely has benefits. There's water cooler moments where you have an ad hoc conversation and an idea pops up. When you're walking down the corridor or you're in a common and shared space, you can't. Those are things. I certainly miss those. And those are hard to replace with digital tools, but it doesn't mean that you have to be in the office all of the time and everybody has to be there. There are certain benefits, especially for the environment, of commuting less and having less office space and the overheads that come along with that.
Great. So what I collect from your examples is that the commitment to the Sustainable Development Goals is pretty intact, and maybe you're looking at the digital transformation tools to even strengthen how to kind of deliver on those different Sustainable Development Goals. Okay,
exactly.
That's great to know. Stephanie, what about Baker & McKinsey?
Sure. So I have to tell you, and this is what Marcelo and Neelam said in the beginning, there have been very positive moments as a result of COVID. And I honestly think that there'll be more traction with respect to the SDGs rather than less traction, because we're seeing what COVID is doing, we're seeing the issues, and what I'm seeing is our clients really want to work with us. Everybody is pulling together during this, pandemic, and everybody wants to work together to help people. And I think one of the lessons, and we have to continue this, is our commitment to collaborating with like-minded companies to move this forward. We have to move this forward. We can't let COVID be a distraction and stop everything. Like with our aspirational targets, we have to continue to push them forward. Our environmental targets, we have to do that. So I think we have to continue what we're doing, and now more than ever we have to push forward, and now more than ever we have to partner with like-minded companies to move this forward.
Great. So partnership for the goals, SDG number 17. Okay, Marcelo?
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to start there. SDG 17, I think, is something that really clearly comes out of this crisis. The amount of people coming together and really working as a unit. Um, okay, granted, there could be some divisions and some politics around, but I would argue that the 95% is people really working together towards one cause, which is great. But I think to the point, I mean, I always have a good discussion when we talk about SDGs. The great thing about it is it is down to a simplicity and to a, let's say, a positive message that is very difficult if somebody wants to at least debate with me the validity of all these SDGs. So if you think about no poverty, I mean, just to take a couple, I mean, and reduce inequalities, this crisis is really going to ask a lot from the government, but also businesses and individuals to mitigate that. I mean, there is going to be a tremendous amount of a need to address inequalities coming out of this. Education is going to be the same with all the virtual learning that is happening now. I think there is really an ask whether this will ever go back to be the same way that it was. Discussions around sustainable cities, right? SDG 11. If you think about how cities will need to be restructured because of this, and even if there is a vaccine and there is no more COVID, this has created a shift change where people are going to remember this. At least a generation or two is going to remember this, and this will affect how cities are developed and how economic development is done and how resources are used. So very, very much linked to the SDGs. And for sure, BSF is thinking about this, but we're not alone. I think a lot of the signatories and a lot of other companies are thinking, what is next? And how do we keep, and most importantly, the institutions that are supposed to help and governments in place that allows really them to help businesses and society in general to keep afloat. Yeah. So I think overall, this is how I would summarize it. It's going to be a booster for the SDGs if we do it right.
Okay, so I know that BSF already has some priority SDGs to kind of chase and deliver on some activities on those around those goals. But do you think like this whole COVID-19 situation is going to change the priorities or maybe add one or two more, or may already like the SDGs that you have as a priority, maybe you'll see some more opportunities or identify some risky areas of SDGs? Do you think that that impact can happen because of this COVID-19? And do you have any plan to kind of reprioritize or see like do another exercise? Okay, do we still have the same SDGs as a priority going forward, or do we want to change after the pandemic? What's the plan there?
Yeah, I would say it's unchanged. And again, if anything, it's going to be boosted, yeah, and it's going to be added. I mean, our focus for us was always SDG 5, SDG 8, if I remember correctly, SDG 11, 12, 17, of course. But this is only gonna if we do it right, and this is the big if, and I'm hopeful that is the case. We will be able to boost the SDGs to the surface that people then really start talking about it, because the crisis is really making these issues quite visible. Yeah, climate action and all this life on land. I mean, the whole issue about the virus coming from animals and then transitioning to humans. I mean, respecting, life on land. I mean, I would really argue it's a booster.
Perfect. Yeah, so one of the other tasks that we were also thinking for the working group is to also discuss with this like-minded individuals all these great initiatives that are being taken to respond to the COVID-19. And when companies have already started reporting on the Sustainable Development Goals, how they can actually make those reflections very clearly in their next sustainability report, which will be due next year. So we probably would like to have those discussions as well as part of the working group exercise. But right now we are kind of drafting the terms of reference, like what exactly, how we can limit the scope. But yeah, I'm getting some great inspirations from these discussions, and maybe I'll definitely address those in the TOR. So we are almost at the very end of the session. I have one final question for all of you. That is, what has been your biggest learning from this pandemic, and what message do you have for the future business leaders? Let's start with Marcelo.
So I think here is for the future leaders is the biggest learning I would say is trust. Be able to build trust, yeah, because and goodwill. We as BSF and I in my position, and I believe this very much. I'm only able to do, or we are only able to do this as a team because there has been trust developed within the team, within the company, and with the government, the way we interact with the government, the way we interact with our customers. And based on that trust, we are able to really put forth and implement a lot of what we're doing. You know? So if there is something that I take out of this crisis, a big learning is that, you know, the trust or the goodwill is very much needed. I mean, I give the example on this rapid response. You know, I think it's because of the work that we've been doing as BSF that we were able to approach some of the associations and you know, different entities and say, look, we really think this is something that is going to be needed, and could you help and promote this? And based on that trust and goodwill that has been there for years, people were very open and said, yeah, absolutely, something that we can go behind this. So I think that it will be my biggest message is really develop trust, but then also be able to keep it. You know?
Great. Stephanie?
Sure. I completely agree with Marcelo. Another learning is that this just reinforces how people are resilient and adaptable. You know, we went from working in an office and immediately functioning in a work from home environment. And so with that, I think one of the priorities and what business leaders should think about is, you know, working from home. Can we help the environment? Can we have certain number of people work from home? Can we change the whole, you know, landscape with respect to working, traveling? Do we need to travel as much on airplanes? You know, now the technology is key, and technology has been key throughout this entire process. You know, we need digital access and we need to use it. We need to use it more. Even when we get back to the office, you know, we should use the technology for meetings or what have you instead of traveling. And I know the social part of it is very important, but can we curb some of it to help the environment? We're at a really good spot with respect to the environment, and you know, it would be great if we can continue doing so. So, you know, we can still work together while at home. I know we need the social interaction, but another point, technology is definitely key, and it should be part of, you know, our daily lives, and it has been instrumental during this time.
Great, yeah, and definitely we are seeing a lot of different digital transformation, and people are saying that the fourth industrial revolution is already on because of this COVID-19. So we also saw some argument from World Economic Forum that the fourth industrial revolution is not about digital transformation only, but also like while using the technologies, how can we make the workplace more inclusive, more people-centric? That's going to be one of the big challenge of this whole revolution. And I can keep my best hope that, yeah, at least these three organizations will definitely keep that into consideration. Neelam, let's hear from you. What are your biggest learning from this pandemic?
Yeah, echoing Marcelo and Stephanie, I would say that the pandemic has shown just how fragile our global systems are, but having said that, how strong our community is globally, and as Stephanie said, how resilient people are, and so that's one piece, and that there is great power in businesses having purpose. And I know it's not a new trend for businesses to say they have a purpose, but when they really put all of their efforts behind it, and it doesn't come at the cost of business performance, it just means changing how we operate. But when businesses really put a dramatic focus on community, whether that's helping their employees and maintaining helping them maintain their physical and mental health, whether it's helping the wider community. You know, we're doing a lot of work around ensuring kids who are off from school and maybe less privileged and don't have access being at home to the meals that they would when they're at school, you know, donating to enable them to be able to have access to food that they are not able to now because they are not at school. So how do businesses continue that level of focus on community, whether it's employees or the wider community? Because it doesn't have to come at the cost of business performance or business operations, and dramatic change is possible. And I think with the sustainability initiatives that we've been talking about for a number of years, there have been big goals in place, but some of the action towards them has been incremental. But this pandemic has shown that dramatic change is possible, and it's possible very quickly. I mean, as the team here said, look how fast everybody transitioned to uptake of digital tools and working from home. It was almost immediate, and the environment too. You know, you see a number of pictures and videos and things on social media about animals now being in places that they haven't been for a long time, or in India where the Himalayas are visible where they haven't been for many years, and from certain locations. So dramatic change is possible, and it doesn't have to come at the expense of businesses' operations. It just comes down to focus.
Great.
And community, and community. Yeah.
These are definitely some great learnings, and one of my biggest learning has been like when we look at the whole climate change situation, and we definitely do see a lot of climate change deniers. I hope this whole COVID-19 situation will kind of open the eyes of those climate change deniers, because this warning about the pandemic situation has been there for a while, but people were just not paying enough attention to this whole issue, and now here we are. So I think the devastation will be way bigger when and if the climate change, when we actually start to see those climate change implications. Hopefully we won't be able to go to that situation, and the pause that we are seeing or experiencing because of this COVID-19 situation, we will be able to take our lessons from this, and the next phase that we design to bring back to our regular normal business, we will put way more consideration to the environmental aspects of business. But with that, I'd like to conclude today's session. Thank you again for joining us today, and thank you so much for all the listeners for joining in today. And this was the first session of our webinar series that I've mentioned earlier, the business continuity through the lens of sustainability. Our next sessions will be in 3 weeks, and we are also going to launch our working group to kind of discuss how the Canadian businesses can respond to this through this COVID-19 crisis. So more of these details will be coming up from our network. Please do subscribe to our network mailing list and stay up to date with all those different updates. And if you have any question about the participation with the UN Global Compact, and how you can also commit to those 10 principles that the speakers discussed today, and if your organization is doing something really exceptional, please do share those with us, and we'd be happy to take the discussion forward. Thank you so much for joining in today. Have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you.